I wonder whether you saw Harry and Meghan, you thought, are they on a tour of Australia? And you thought, well, hang on a minute, I thought Her late Majesty the Queen said, you're either in or you're out. You can't have one foot in the royal camp and another foot in the earning money camp and combine the two things. The number's 0207 862 2222. Do get your calls in. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan are in Australia for 4 days on a trip that includes visits to charitable causes alongside private money-making engagements. They say they're visiting as private citizens because they stopped, of course, being working royals in 2020. They say the trip is privately funded. There is ongoing debate, however, about their security costs because authorities have confirmed there will be a police presence in order to ensure public safety. Their stops include meeting patients and medics at a children's hospital. And they're both speaking at very expensive events. Meghan's going to appear at a $1,400 a pop girls' weekend retreat. So I wonder whether you think the criticism the couple have been facing in the press is unfair, or do you think they really should not be going on these quasi-royal tours, a bit sort of pretend, not quite royal, not quite not royal, in the first place? The late Queen, of course, said you're either in or out. So do let me know your thoughts. We'll start with Daisy on this because she is a seasoned royal correspondent. So they deny that it's a tour, but my goodness, it looks like a tour, doesn't it?
It's that sort of thing where you think, well, does it quack like a tour and walk like a tour? And therefore it is a tour.
Yeah.
The problem with them is for them to pay their bills, they have to make some money. Mm-hmm. For them, how are they going to make that money? They've tried various different ways to do that, whether it's Netflix, Spotify, documentaries, selling jam, whatever it might be. But they're clearly not making as much as they want to make. And the easiest way for them to make money is to do public appearances. Mm-hmm. That is the fastest way that they can use their profile to pay their bills. And that's what they're doing in Australia. And there's a part of me that thinks, well, that's, if somebody wants to pay them, who am I to tell them that they shouldn't accept that money? If somebody wants to offer them to talk about their jam making and pay them an absolute fortune, then fine. The trouble is, it, as you were saying, it merges what and who they are. Who do they think they are? And what is the role that they're performing? And so this is why, in this instance, rather than the Netflix or the Spotify, it looks messier and murkier because you can't quite work out whether this is a ribbon cutting exercise, therefore something that's royal, or whether this is a private enterprise. On the other hand, if you are travelling as far as Australia and if you are doing those jobs, and if somebody who is associated with a charity that they support, because they do still support a significant number of charities,
Absolutely.
Wants them to do something nice, like meet some kids in the hospital, who am I to say they shouldn't do that with their spare time? But I completely understand why people find this harder to understand than just a purely for money contract that they've been doing, writing a book, doing a documentary. Those are sort of easier to comprehend.
Or purely not for money, because it would be possible to go to Australia, visit hospitals, visit orphanages, cut ribbons, plant trees and not get paid. You could do that if you wanted to do that.
But we don't think they're getting paid for the charitable bits they're doing, but they are getting paid for other bits that they're doing. And that's where it all looks a bit murky.
But part of the murkiness presumably is that when they tour, or at least, visit hospitals and lay hands on and shake hands and pat babies on the head and all that kind of thing, they look and seem and feel royal. Yes. And it's that royalness that gets them the gig, the paid gig, the very expensive weekend at £1,400 a pop. That's because she's Duchess of Sussex and because she's just been at the hospital shaking hands and cuddling babies. If she were not doing that, if she was just in a hotel room or lying on the beach in a bikini, it doesn't look as royal and you don't get paid as much when you get the gig. So it's exactly what the Queen, the late Queen, was saying about you can't be either partly in and partly out. You've got to either be in or out. And this seems to be, you might say, the best or indeed the worst of both worlds.
I think it's unarguable that the money they have made so far has been because they are royals or married to a royal, and the money that they're going to continue to make. And this is the bit that I think they perhaps are coming to terms with, that the money they will always make will always be because of their royal connections. Yeah. It's not like Harry's going to retrain as a plumber and Meghan's going to retrain as a masseuse and that's how they're going to make their money. That's not going to happen. And the only way that they're going to pay their £4 million a year private security is by taking big, expensive gigs. And the only reason they're going to get those gigs is because of the royal connection. And that's just the truth of the matter.
I think that's pretty obvious, right? Yeah, I mean, they'd be pretty silly not to think so. They're obviously getting this offered to them and being invited over there because of where they've came from, because of the royal status that they used to acquire. I find it really conflicting and really confusing myself watching what's going on, because back in 2020, they obviously hadn't got very kind words to say about their last tour that they did in Australia, and yet they're willing to go back when things have been paid for. So for me, I'm like, oh, it just feels like they're selling out again. It would be one thing going over, spending time with the charities. I mean, and of course these charities and the Women's Refuge are getting publicity because they're there. Absolutely amazing. That's what TV and movie stars do. That's one of the perks of the job. We get to raise awareness for charities and likewise. But they are then taking payment for private things. That, in my opinion, is what's given this whole thing a bad look.
And it's true, presumably, David, that, you know, the further they step from royal duties and from royal associations, so they're not at Ascot and they're not at memorial services and they're just not seen with the royal family at all, the less bankable they are. As soon as they rev it up a bit and they kind of remind everybody that they were royal, they are royal, or whatever it is they think they are, then they earn a few more shillings doing whatever they do.
I'm not 100% sure that that's the case, Vanessa. I think that the royal family at the moment is suffering from a dearth of charisma.
Do you?
And I absolutely do, yeah. And I think that globally, polls in the UK are very different to polls globally. Globally, Harry and Meghan are the most popular royals we have globally. And they're not part of the firm. And I think that actually really impacts the firm.
But let me just ask Daisy this. Isn't it true that their popularity in the US has fallen quite dramatically? They were very popular. And in the US, they're not as popular as they were, are they?
And again, both things could be true, because maybe it's not a coincidence that they're in Australia, where they're probably significantly more popular than in America. In America, when they first went over there, they were pretty... But the Americans were quite excited about them coming. And then we've had sort of all the whinging and complaining, and now they are significantly less popular in the States than they were. And William and Catherine are miles ahead of them in the States.
Interesting. So I'm interested that you say you feel that the royal family lacks charisma or lacks star characters.
Yeah, I think
you don't think William and Kate provide that?
I think that they do, to a point. I mean, you spoke about the late Queen. I mean, I remember the late Queen calling them Duke and Duchess Doolittle. I think that there is more that they can do. There was a time when the Queen was alive when it felt as though the royal family was much more present, much more active, much more, not accessible, certainly, but there would always seem to be things that, and with the exception of Princess Anne,
who never stops working.
It feels as though, and of course the king has not been well, but it feels as though that kind of ethic is missing from the generation after them.
I feel like we're just missing the Queen.
Yeah.
You know, when you put it like that, that's what we're missing. That was the essence of that era. 100% agree. But I'm a massive fan of William and Kate, and I do believe that is our future. And I think that we're fully invested in the UK with William and Kate going forward.
And we can't forget that she's been very ill herself. And, you know, she's done a noble job in coming back into the workforce and being seen. And everybody says that whenever they meet her, she is an absolute delight. You know, and you know, the phrase, she never puts a foot wrong, that's difficult in the full scrutiny of social media. Everyone's got a phone and a camera. Everybody's trying to catch you out. And somehow she's got a natural grace, don't you think? A natural, excellent manners, natural enthusiasm. She seems really genuinely to care about people. And it comes over, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my daughter's 14 and you know, Kate is somebody who she looks up to. I remember when I was growing up, you know, I wanted to be a princess and look up to the girls that we saw, you know, when we were watching the Royal Parade and on the balcony. And I think that we're now seeing that that's what young girls are kind of aspiring to be.
I think that's really interesting that you've got a teenage daughter who aspires, because actually that's a demographic that the royals are doing the worst in. And sometimes that's just normal, that the younger you are, the less interested in the royal family you are. But very often it's also cyclical, because when the royal family has, and it's normally, it has young prince and princesses who are sort of between 18 and 25, that's normally when the royal family has the most amount of interest put upon it. Also the most attention, the most scrutiny. It's very, very difficult. But when there are young, single, glamorous love stories going on, that's when the tabloids get excited. That's when younger teenagers tend to get more excited, idolise. You know, Prince Andrew, I mean, it's impossible to believe it now, but back in the day, he was that pin-up that, you know, the teenage girls would talk about.
So was Prince William back in the 90s.
And Prince William and Harry, absolutely. And so this is why, you know, when you're watching the royal family, you can see these ebbs and troughs as they get more popular when they get the young glamorous. I mean, it's that simple often. And then it ebbs. And we're in a bit of an ebb at the moment, because although William and Catherine are beautiful and young to most of us, they're not, and so I was interested when you were saying about your teenager, they're not the sort of pin-ups that I think George and Louis and Charlotte, poor things, but they will have that scrutiny and they will bring that glamour, and they inevitably will be beautiful and will be idolised.
Yes. Let's talk to Marion in Devon about this. What do you think about this, Marion? Are you pleased to see them touring around hospitals in Australia?
I think they're a wonderful little couple. Yeah. I think, we should be very, very proud of our royals. I am a royalist, but I think, let them go. They're doing their duty. They're doing what they think is right. People always got somebody that's always one of the royals in trouble.
And the split with the King and with Prince William, and the fact that they are not really meant to be part of the royal family anymore, Marion, that doesn't bother you or worry you? Yes,
of course it bothers me. I think they should be in with the royals. I think that boy's worked really hard. He's like his mum in every way, and I think she was a wonderful lady, and let him get on with his life.
But getting on with your life isn't quite the same, is it, as having a sort of pretend royal tour that you say isn't a royal tour, and then getting paid to give speeches and have weekends while you're there. It's not quite the same as getting on with your life, is it?
Well, I think so. I think he's doing what he thinks is right, and that's my opinion anyway.
It's good to hear from you, Marion, and you're absolutely entitled to your opinion. I mean, Daisy, do you think he's doing what he thinks is right, or is he doing it because he needs another earning stream?
I think it's probably much more to do with he needs another earning stream. I'm just going back to what I was saying earlier. This isn't how they wanted their career to pan out. We know that because they tried very hard to make other careers with producing TV shows, and that's what they thought that their skills as executives and creatives and producers were going to be in demand in America. And it turns out that those skills or lack of skills was not in demand. So they are now, in my opinion, they are now moving to Plan B. And Plan B is a much more traditional, we were royals, people will pay to hear us, make speeches, and we'll go and do some glad handing. And that's how we're going to earn our living, which is why it sticks in the throat for a lot of people. But also I think they tried something. They tried to do something that wasn't quasi-royal. They tried a career in movie and TV production, and that has not worked out for them. So now they're falling back on this.
And just checking those photographs of Meghan and the wife of the head of Netflix, Mr. Surandos, holding hands and passionately embracing, in a way I've never really seen most other women of that kind of age do in a public way like that, unless they're having a secret love affair. What was that?
Not so secret.
If I got an opportunity to hug her and get on Netflix, I'd do the same thing.
Yeah. Imagine holding her hand, though, while you've got your head on your husband's shoulder.
I'd probably give her a snog as well.
You, my God, you're shameless. Shameless, Michelle Heaton. What did you think of that? What was that about?
But that is quite, again, it's quite American. It's
quite Californian.
It's quite Californian.
Yep.
It's very un-British. And if you're trying to send a message with an image rather than with words, nothing to see here. We all love each other. They might have been called grifters by other Hollywood execs, but everything's going well in this area. That's all it is.
Well,
it's
they're going to get some sympathy from Margaret in Merseyside. Margaret, you're on their side.
Yes, I am.
Tell me why. What you feel
I think they're very unfairly treated. I mean, you've got the royal family banging on about how they're marvellous treating people with mental health issues.
Yeah.
And Meghan and Harry have both admitted they have mental health issues, and they throw them under the bus.
But how do you think they were thrown under the bus when it was Meghan and Harry who decided to leave and to make the break?
I think they had no alternative. They had no choice. They were getting treated so badly.
So you really feel for them. So when you see them touring, you think, well, good for you, and
I do, yes.
Yeah.
And they've got to make money somehow,
right?
And no one else is going to give it them like the rest of them get.
Okay, so you're absolutely with them. We're certainly not getting much criticism for them. If we're taking the temperature here, people are well behind them. It's interesting,
let's not forget, it was the British media that drove them to the point of wanting to leave. When you just look at a montage of, there are a couple of specific papers, but when you look at a montage of their front pages, they were pretty much on those front pages 3 days a week, and it was remorselessly negative.
I know that Daisy's going to say that's not the case and that the media was very much behind them at the beginning. I'm very pleased to see Meghan at the beginning.
At the beginning, they definitely were. But if you read Harry's book and if you hear what they say, their perception was 100% what David is saying. They perceived that they were being attacked.
Well, I bought the papers and I read it, and my perception was exactly the same. It was there in print.
And there was lots of criticism, but I'm not altogether surprised that this Australia tour isn't getting a huge amount of criticism, because the things that people have hated that Harry and Meghan have done have been sticking it to the king, sticking it to William, sticking it to the late Queen, being very, very rude, disrespectful, constantly complaining. And that's not what this tour is about. So there are loads of things that people find irritating about Harry and Meghan, but it is normally that sense of lack of gratitude, lack of diplomacy, being downright horrible about Catherine and William. And I think people really bridle against that. This, I think, is just slightly grubby attempt to make some money to pay their bills.
Let's see what Anna in Lancashire says, because you heard Daisy there say it's slightly grubby. I don't think you think that, Anna, do you?
No, I think that the media were to blame a lot of the horrible things they put in. But Harry went to the Queen and asked, could he do the same as Beatrice and Eugenie, do charity work, what they want, what they chose to do. And they said, no, you're in or out. So they went out. But they carried on doing charity work. They said they would. And they've carried on doing it while they're in America. But we don't talk about it over here. So why shouldn't they go to Australia? If they're doing good, he wants us, the Invictus Games. And what if he does get paid? All our MPs get paid for going to different areas, don't they, all around the world?
I mean, they do. I'm not sure it's quite the same thing, but yeah, you're quite right. They certainly do.
But actually, and that point, Boris Johnson gets hundreds of thousands of pounds for making a short speech.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, he's an ex-Prime Minister, so does he have more of a right to make money? Debatable.
Well, he's also a tremendously good and gifted speech maker, whatever you think of his politics.
But how do you know that Harry and Meghan aren't? How do you know that they're not? And how do you know that they're not more in demand?
I suspect that Meghan is not, because every time she makes a speech, somebody in the audience helpfully counts the number of times she says "I." And every single sentence she says usually begins with "I did this, I this, and this, and this." And people sitting there think, my gosh, where's the rest of your perspective on other things? I mean, I think that's one of the things people say about her speech making. Also, her podcast interviews were not necessarily the most riveting and kind of groundbreaking.
They're very worthy. They're very California. And some people love that. Most Brits don't. We have a different sense of humour. We have a different turn of phrase. We find it all a bit navel-gazing. And
I think the American way is just extra.
Can I just say, I know you say most Brits don't, but certainly not the viewers of this programme. They wouldn't agree with you.
Yeah, they're very supportive. Everybody's right. So far, everybody's right behind them. And it's very fair, David, to say that. And thank you so much for your calls. I'm quite surprised, because I thought we'd get some criticism of them. And
Credits to Vanessa for the discussion and debate that inspired this conversation about Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the decision to keep Archie and Lilibet largely out of the public eye. It is genuinely fascinating how people say Harry and Meghan should protect their children, but then the moment they actually do protect them, critics complain that they are not seeing enough of them. That contradiction says everything. Meghan posting a previously unseen photo of Archie for his birthday was not some grand publicity stunt. It was a mother celebrating her son turning 7 years old. Millions of parents do the exact same thing online every single day. The only difference is that Meghan cannot post a family picture without it becoming an international debate about monarchy, branding, privacy, and royal strategy. And honestly, Harry and Meghan are doing something incredibly reasonable. They are allowing their children to have a childhood before the world decides who they are. That should not be controversial. Eve made a really important point during the discussion when she talked about giving children the chance to look back and say, that was our Montecito childhood. That matters. Harry especially understands the cost of growing up under relentless public attention. He has spoken for years about how damaging constant media exposure was for him after losing his mother. So why would he willingly repeat that experience with Archie and Lilibet? People forget that Harry's entire life has been shaped by what happens when royal children are treated like public property instead of actual human beings. He knows firsthand what that pressure looks like. So when he and Meghan decide to keep their children mostly private, it is not hypocrisy, it is parenting. And honestly, they are striking a pretty balanced approach. They are not pretending their children do not exist. They occasionally share little glimpses, a birthday photo, a family moment, a clip from behind, tiny pieces of their life that they choose to share on their own terms. That is completely different from putting their children in front of cameras every single week. The weirdest criticism in this whole debate is this idea that because Archie and Lilibet are 6th and 7th in line to the throne, the public somehow deserves access to them. No, they do not. These are still children. And realistically, the chances of either of them becoming monarch are incredibly slim. So the argument that they must immediately be raised publicly as future working royals feels outdated and unnecessary. What Harry and Meghan seem to be saying is simple: let the children decide later. And honestly, that sounds far healthier than deciding their entire identity before they are old enough to understand any of it. Another thing that stood out in this discussion was the double standard. People criticize Harry and Meghan for selectively sharing photos of their children, but the royal family has always carefully controlled access to royal children too. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are photographed strategically all the time. Birthday portraits are released. Balcony appearances are planned. Family videos are shared during special events. That is also image management. The only difference is that when William and Catherine do it, people call it tradition. When Meghan does it, people call it manipulation. And that double standard follows Meghan everywhere. If she showed Archie and Lilibet constantly, critics would accuse her of exploiting them. If she keeps them private, critics accuse her of teasing the public. No matter what she does, someone finds a reason to complain. At some point, people have to admit that maybe the issue is not actually the photos. Maybe the issue is simply Meghan herself. Because if another celebrity mother shared occasional glimpses of her children while protecting their privacy, most people would completely understand it. And another important point is this constant accusation that Harry and Meghan only show the children when they have something to promote. That criticism does not really hold up when you look at what actually gets posted. A birthday tribute for Archie is normal. A family photo during a holiday is normal. Parents post those things because they are proud of their kids, not because there is some giant conspiracy behind every Instagram upload. And honestly, the obsession surrounding these children is exactly why Harry and Meghan are so protective in the first place. Even during this conversation, people were debating whether they should see more of Archie and Lilibet simply because they are connected to the royal family. That mentality alone explains why the Sussexes chose a different path. They want their children to grow up with some sense of normalcy before the world places expectations on them. And frankly, that sounds like responsible parenting. The conversation also touched on Harry and Meghan's broader role outside the monarchy, and this is where people often underestimate them. Despite all the criticism, they still have enormous public appeal. Vanessa even acknowledged that when Harry and Meghan appear somewhere, people are excited to see them. That is because they still have star power. Whether critics like it or not, people remain deeply interested in them. Their recent appearances proved that crowds still gather, audiences still engage, media outlets still cover every move they make. And perhaps that is what frustrates some people the most. Harry and Meghan stepped away from the royal institution, but they did not disappear. If anything, they became even more globally recognizable because they built their own platform outside palace control. And now they are raising their children according to their own rules, instead of centuries-old expectations. At the end of the day, Archie's birthday photo was not some constitutional crisis. It was a family moment. A mother sharing love for her son. A father protecting his children the way he wishes he had been protected himself. And honestly, after everything Harry went through growing up in the spotlight, it is hard to blame him for wanting something different for Archie and Lilibet.